Hello and welcome into the Sunday live stream circus.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible. To be invincible, we'll be
Hello and welcome into the Sunday live stream for week 15. It is the beginning of the fantasy football playoffs. Just very quickly, we're going to run through the games that have already happened because obviously with a set of data like 4 games to use, we are going to be able to make some decisions based on that data. So just very quickly, Lions at Broncos, Lions 42, Broncos 17. Lions kicked the shit out of them. It was basically all Goff, Laporta, Amon-Ra, and Jahmyr Gibbs. So if you had any of those 4 guys, you're probably looking for more floor plays today as opposed to high ceiling plays, especially if you had a stack of Goff and any of those. However, on the flip side, if you had the Broncos, you might have been a little disappointed by the production from, for example, Cortland Sutton, who went without a touchdown. Russell Wilson didn't have a great game. Javonte Williams, there was some people lamenting that he had his touchdown called back. So if you're in that boat, you're obviously going to be looking for some more upside plays. Same thing for the Colts. Unfortunately, injuries took out Michael Pittman and Zach Moss. Now, Moss at least got the touchdown for you before he exited. But Gardner Minshew had an excellent game. So if he was one of your quarterbacks, you might be feeling a little better. However, on the flip side, basically Deontay Johnson was the only viable Steeler for fantasy because he got the touchdown. Freiermuth, Najee, even Jaylen Warren flat busted. So if you have those guys in your lineup, I've got Najee in a couple lineups. I'm going to be having to manage around that one fucking point he got. So I'm probably going to have to look for some upside plays. So like, for example, I do not want to play Gabe Davis. I really fucking don't, but I might have to today. So that's kind of where we're at. And then throwing it back, before I throw it back to Thursday, Vikings, Bengals, kind of the same thing. Justin Jefferson got by on PPR. Jamar Chase got injured. T. Higgins had the 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon found the end zone. But you were otherwise probably, and Ty Chandler had a monster game. But you were probably otherwise disappointed. So again, basing your decisions off what you already have in play is going to be a big overarching theme today. And then throwing it back to Chargers, Raiders, obviously Raiders defense, Zamir White, some of those pieces were extra valuable. Shout out to Megan L. Hall, joined. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chats. My boy Raphael Quinton, always joining us. Big day today. That's right. Hawkinson was not bad. That's right. I saw some people lamenting that Hawkinson was terrible. 6 for 60-ish from your tight end position on any given week is viable. So it's not the end of the world. He didn't bust the way that Najee Harris busted and fucked up your lineups. So if you had TJ Hawkinson, it's okay. I would pretty much just be playing it like the same way I normally would. So our first question of the day coming in from the Fantasy Football Advice Network. This is from the group chat. There's lots of people always jumping in there asking questions. Cooper Kupp, Rashee Rice, or Puka Nacua already had Devontae Adams. this says just Adams' play yesterday, so that can't have been Devontae. Who the fuck are they talking about then? Now I'm just confused. Adams. To me, if you say just Adams, I'm assuming that you mean Devontae. I don't even know who else there would be. I'm going to just assume that they meant on Thursday. So yeah, if you already had Devontae Adams play, he ultimately ended up having a good game. So for me, I'm going to probably look for what I think is a floor play. So between those three guys, I mean, I really like Rashee Rice and what he's been doing lately, but to me, I still have to go with the talent of Cooper Kupp. If Cooper Kupp is healthy and on the field, like we saw against the Ravens in a bad matchup, he feels like still the viable floor play when he's healthy and the leader of this offense. If I already had Devontae, so if Devontae Adams had been dog shit on Thursday, maybe I make the decision of, okay, maybe I think Rashee Rice has the most upside and actually has a huge game, and I go with my gut and I throw him in my lineup. That's pretty much the only caveat that I would say for if I was going to play Rashee Rice. And obviously, if I'm picking between Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, even though they are both excellent receivers, I'm going to go with the established superstar wide receiver that is Cooper Kupp. So I think that's the way I'm rolling ultimately is with Cooper Kupp because again, Devontae Adams has already played and had a decent game. So I'm looking for safe floor now. Who to start in the flex? So Olave being a game time decision is definitely going to affect a lot of people today and the decision-making processes that you have to make. And that's actually another thing. Now, obviously, it was more in flux yesterday, being that yesterday was Saturday. And so if you had a Ty Chandler, for example, you were questioning whether you should start him over, just as an example, a Devon Achane, who's been questionable all week, got a practice in on Friday. I think he plays, but maybe is limited. So, that's a situation where if you didn't want to wait, I could see having gone with Ty Chandler. I was in a situation in multiple leagues. They're both super flex. One is Scott Fishbowl. Shout out to Scott Fishbowl. But the other one is my home league super flex. And that one, very concerning because I was able to pick up Nick Mullins and Drew Lock, and I did the same thing in Scott Fishbowl. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, is Geno Smith going to play on Monday? And if he does, am I really going to wait till Monday to maybe not have a quarterback at all? So I ended up just going with Nick Mullins. It was more viable in Scott Fishbowl. The settings there, you get points for first downs. So some of those first down rushing plays that really annoyed the shit out of people because it wasn't going to Ty Chandler and they kept doing the push tush. Those actually really helped me in Scott Fishbowl. So I was happy about that. But yeah, so you're having to make decisions obviously ahead of time with playoffs on the line. So like if I had Rashid Shaheed, for example, I think I would wait and just if Olave doesn't play, I would put Shaheed in my lineup as an upside play. He might be on your waivers too right now. So if you're an Olave owner, you should probably run out and just double check and see. So that's just, in theory, he's asking basically, should I start Keaton Mitchell or start Evan Ingram, I guess, is what he has available to him from what I'm reading here. So, I mean, I would go with Evan Ingram. That's me personally. I feel like Ingram is like a safer play right now with Christian Kirk banged up and on IR. It's mostly going to go through Evan Ingram for the short intermediary passes. That's why Calvin Ridley is very boomer bust because he's more of an outside big play receiver. And if the big plays aren't there, then neither are his fantasy points, generally speaking. He's not the guy that's going to go and get you 9 for 90 out of the slot. That's Evan Ingram territory. So I love Evan Ingram today. Shout out to Mike Virginia in the comments, joined. Thank you so much for joining. And then he said, Aaron Jones, baby. You know what? I actually was looking at it this morning on Underdog. So this is my first year doing Underdog, and I've really enjoyed the format and just like the way that it all works and everything. And I was looking at my best ball stuff this morning, and on weekly winners, I have a team that is very live right now. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta stacked on the same team. So obviously, riding high on that. I'm going to need a big game today from Aaron Jones because Najee Harris shit the bed. So basically, I need Devon Achane to play in any capacity, and I need Aaron Jones to have a decent game. If Achane and Aaron Jones can have a decent game for me today, I think I could legitimately win at least a couple $100 on this weekly winner. Because like I said, I've already got Goff, Amon-Ra, and Sam Laporta already blew up. I've got Deontay Johnson also had a touchdown. Michael Pittman and Quentin Johnston were fine. They had like 10 points each. And I still have Puka Nacua and DJ Moore potentially who could like hit big today. So this team looking very live in the weekly winners. So yeah, I'm also going to be hoping and praying and relying on Aaron Jones today. And then Raphael said Zay Jones over Calvin Ridley. I wouldn't go that far. I think this is very defense centric. So Zay Jones and Evan Ingram. I mean, Evan Ingram at this point, you can just start him no matter what because he's the tight end and he's going to get a lot of the intermediary work, like I said. But with Zay Jones, a little bit like Christian Kirk, except flipped and reversed, I think is what it is. I'd have to double check. But I think Zay Jones does a little better against zone coverages because he is good at finding those soft spots in the zones. And then, so if you're playing like a heavy zone defense, that's where I might go with Zay Jones. But if it's a man defense, like they do a lot of man-on-man stuff, I would still go with Calvin Ridley and the potential because I don't see the upside for Zay Jones to like have 100 yards and a tutty or two. Like I see that possibility in any given game for Calvin Ridley. Unfortunately, don't see that always for Zay Jones. Shout out to Juan Pena Jr., who for my wide receiver one, and then we're picking two RBs here. So we've got Rashee Rice, Tyler Lockett, Romeo Doubs, Amari Cooper. And then for running backs, we've got James Conner, Jerome Ford, Antonio Gibson, and A.J. Dillon. So Dillon I'm going to eliminate immediately because he's dealing with a broken thumb, I think it is. So even if he does play, I mean, he's been terrible all year anyways. So it's like if he's going to play with an injury, I'm not going to put him in my lineup. I think this is going to depend on, again, outside information. So does your opponent have Sam Laporta, Jared Goff, Raiders defense, Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, like someone that Ty Chandler? Has your opponent been going off? If that's the case, I'm actually going to go with Jerome Ford and Antonio Gibson. I think they potentially have the most upside today. I love James Conner normally, but the matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, even though it's at home, that's going to be rough. Maybe he gets a touchdown and has a good day. That's kind of what it feels like you're betting on. Now, also potentially he could see more passing work given that Hollywood is likely to miss. But honestly, I think I would go with the upside plays of Jerome Ford and Antonio Gibson, unless I'm the one that has like all the juice and then I just need the safest of safe floors, in which case I'm going to flip it to James Conner and Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford feels like he's in for me no matter what. He is off injury reports. There was the worry about the wrist. He avoided any fractures or breaks, and he's fully off injury report. So is Kareem Hunt, who is dealing with his own groin issue, but they share the backfield well, and Jerome Ford gets a lot of the passing work out of the backfield. So I really like him as kind of a safe Like, you need 10 points. I feel like it's impossible almost for Jerome Ford to not get there. So I like Jerome Ford and I like Gibson for upside because of the potential of a shootout and getting more passing work. And then James Conner for floor. And then your wide receiver question is probably the hardest one. I think ultimately I'm going to go with Rashee Rice. What I've seen from him as of late, he has stepped into the Juju Smith-Schuster role that we saw previously for the Kansas City Chiefs, which was the only viable wide receiver role. Somebody's got to catch the fucking ball there. And then assuming, I don't know what's going on with Isaiah Pacheco, but if he's going to be out again, they usually will pass a little bit more. So I do like Rashee Rice. I also really like Tyler Lockett. And I mean, I like Dobbs too. I feel like it's a toss-up between them three. And even Amari Cooper with Flacco is more viable rest of season. So this was probably your hardest decision. Again, if I'm just looking for pure floor play, then I probably will go Lockett at the end of the day. But if I need a little bit more upside, I think Rashee Rice is the play here. And then this is obviously just a year-long question, but is Sam Laporta the new George Kittle, or dare I say Gronk? So no, he's neither of those things. Sam Laporta doesn't play with the violence normally that we've seen from George Kittle and especially Gronk in the past. He's definitely not Gronk. Gronk, I don't think people realize Gronk was fucking huge. Gronk is like 6'7", like almost 260 pounds. Like, Gronk is borderline the size of a lineman. And what made him so dominant was the fact that he could move at all. Sam Laporta actually reminds me more of a Mark Andrews type, where he is a true receiver. And even when it was the preseason and I was evaluating the rookie tight ends and which one I liked the most, it was ultimately Sam Laporta that I was opting to draft. He was my most drafted rookie tight end. In best ball, I have like insane amounts of Laporta shares, like over 50%, like just over 50% Laporta shares, because the big thing for me was when I was watching his game tape and I was looking at the difference between him and a Dalton Kincaid, for example. Kincaid can be really good at high pointing balls, being a pure receiver, but he falls like a fucking bag of bricks. This guy's like Mike Williams, just like every time he falls, it's like a comet landing on Earth. And Kincaid kind of had the same problem. So I worried about Kincaid's health. When I would watch Sam Laporta, he was just so smooth with the route running, especially, it felt like, for a tight end. The way that he was able to get open in space. Yes, he has a lot of athleticism and speed. And so, yes, he can break tackles and he can take long plays to the house. But I think what's most impressive to me about Sam Laporta, again, is the route running and how effortless he makes a lot of the catches look. Because, again, he's not going up and making this crazy catch and then coming down on the back of his fucking noodle. Like, he's not going out and like catching a pass and then like running over 5 dudes to get to it. No, it really is like it is similar in a lot of ways to Mark Andrews and being like an actual viable receiving tight end. So yes, he was my favorite coming out, and he's, hit the bill the whole time basically. Also, I think he's on pace to break the all-time rookie record for yards by a tight end, which still to this day is held by Mike Ditka. It's a record that stood for like over 50 years. It's kind of insane that nobody's broken it still in the year of 2023. But it seems like Sam Laporta is going to do it. Ooh. Yeah, what does he have on the year? That's what I'm curious. Very curious. Yeah, 758 receiving yards on the year. Ooh. And then there's 1, 2, 3 games left. So he would basically need 250 divided by 3. I suck at math. Like 70 yards a game, give or take. 100. No, that's 210. Like 80 yards a game, I think. Something like that. Anyways, we'll light this little joint up. We'll wait for a couple more comments to stroll their way in here. If not, I'll go look on the Fantasy Football Advice Network, see what I can pull from there. Light them if you got them. Definitely is like a beleaguered week for fantasy. It's like very love-hate the fact that there's already 4 games that have run, because I feel like you're either sitting in a position of, okay, I still have a really good chance, or I'm dominating, or you're looking down the barrel like there's no fucking way I'm going to win. I'm very excited to get my weed delivery. Shout out to Ganja Express. If you live in Canada, highly recommend that you be ordering your weed. You can order from anywhere in Canada. I use 2 sites primarily, but Ganja Express is definitely my favorite. They're based out of BC. But this stuff that I'm smoking, I'm just tired of it. It's some Afghan Kush I got on the cheap. It's like an outdoor Kush. It's fine, but it's like, this is like swag weed. This is the kind of shit you sell on the streets for like fucking 30 a quarter. All right, let's pull up the network, see what's going on over there. And then we might be able to get out of here early today. We'll see what's up. All right, here we go. This is what the fuck? Some of these questions, the formatting sometimes. All right, all full PPR questions, 2 leagues. So I'm going to be picking from different lines here. So the first one, pick 2. Pollard, Jaden Reed, or James Cook. As much as I like Jaden Reed, oh man, at Tampa, that matchup at Tampa, though. That is pure juice. I think I'm going to go with, still though, actually, you know what? I'm going to be risky, a little risky here, I think. I'm going to go with Jaden Reed because that matchup is just too good to ignore. I'm actually going to go with James Cook because I feel like if Dallas is leading and Buffalo plays from behind, that's better for Cook than Pollard. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Buffalo's run defense is still, I mean, they've been kind of muddled this year, but it feels like they've been picking up steam the last little while. I think I'm going to risk it with Jaden Reed and James Cook. Again, though, if you already had Goff, Laporta, if you already had like smash plays, if you had Raiders defense, I think I would play the floor. I'm going to be doing a lot of like deciding between ceiling and floor. So for me, the ceiling is Jaden Reed and James Cook, but the floor is Pollard and Cook. And then next up, Waddle or Jaden Reed. This is where I'm going to go with the risk. It really hasn't been there for Waddle. That matchup is brutal. So I'm going to go with Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed can get it done through the air and on the ground, especially if we see A.J. Dillon banged up. Even if Aaron Jones were to return, it still leaves those kind of jet sweep opportunities open for a Jaden Reed. And through the air, that matchup is just irresistible to me. Tampa's been absolutely getting eviscerated through the air. And also Christian Watson probably going to miss again. So I think I would go with Jaden Reed there. Pick a defense. Here we go. Defense. Titans versus Houston. Saints versus Giants. Ravens versus Jacksonville. I'm actually going to go with, oh man, it feels like every time I've tried to go with the Titans this year, they fuck me over. But it's supposed to be Davis Mills today. And he's like a competent starting quarterback, but they should also, I think Nico Collins is going to miss as well. So if you're telling me that the Texans are going to go on the road into Tennessee, who has been kind of surging as of late, Derrick Henry averaging 2 touchdowns the last 3 games, and they're going to be without their quarterback and without their 2 starting wide receivers, and relying basically on Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. I think I would roll with the Titans. Again, I think it's a very risk reward. So again, if your opponent played Raiders defense or had like someone really go off, I might look for the upside and take Tennessee and kind of hope that they can turn over Houston once or twice, maybe for a touch. But I think actually the safest play here is the Saints, because even though Tommy DeVito's been playing much better as of late, hey, I'm in the playoffs over here. I would still probably play Saints defense, because holy fuck, do they ever give up a lot of sacks in New York. So even when Tommy is playing well, he's going to eat like 5 sacks a game. I think actually probably Saints is the safest answer here, but I do like Titans as well. Here we go. Pick one: James Conner, Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary, or CEH. Again, I might be wrong, but I'm rolling with Jerome Ford here. Jerome Ford's been kind of my guy. I traded for him in a couple leagues. I really like the schedule this week, next week, and the week after. So your entire fantasy playoffs. I was very concerned about the wrist injury, but again, he managed to avoid any major damage and is off injury report. So it seems like it's okay. So I'm going with Jerome Ford there. Just because James Conner, that matchup with San Fran is going to be rough. But actually, you know what? Every time James Conner has a bad matchup and he's at home, it feels like they lean on him and he gets all the work. I think I'm going to switch my answer here to James Conner. And earlier we kind of had a similar debate about James Conner. I think, again, it's if I'm looking for the floor, I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, I already had Laporta go off, or I already had Goff and Amon-Ra stacked go off, or I had Raiders again. In those situations where I'm up big, or even in situations where I'm looking across at my opponent and they had Ja'Marr Chase and Najee Harris and they are already shitting the bed. Again, in all of the situations where I feel like I'm up big, I'm going to try and maybe mitigate some of the risk and play some floor plays like a James Conner, who, if it doesn't work out, probably sees 20 touches for 70 yards. Like that feels like a bad game, which ends up being like 7 to 10 fantasy points, depending how many receptions he gets. Whereas, like, I see more upside for Jerome Ford in a potentially winning effort against Chicago Bears defense, who, yes, they've been better as of late, but they're still like not like a top level defense in my mind. But maybe that's me being slow to adjust. Ultimately, I'm gonna go with James Conner for floor, Ford for upside, and then pick one quarterback: Tommy DeVito, Case Keenum, Derek Carr, Zach Wilson, or Joe Flacco. Hey, we're winning fantasy playoffs over here. I'm going with Tommy DeVito. No, I had to do that joke. In reality, I love Tommy DeVito. There's no fucking way that I'm trusting my fantasy playoffs to him. I think you have to go with Joe Flacco as a floor play. I actually don't hate Case Keenum. Case Keenum and DeAndre Hopkins are set up perfectly for a monster revenge game. I could see Keenum throwing 3 touchdowns on his former team. Yeah, this is just, oh yeah, I think this is setting up as juicy. I'm actually going to roll with Case Keenum. Very ballsy decision to throw Keenum in there. And then, you know what? Now that I'm like looking at that, maybe I don't like the Titans matchup earlier. Like I said, because yeah, I'm thinking about like Keenum. Or wait, Keenum's on the other side. What the fuck am I even talking about? Keenum to DeAndre. DeAndre's on the Titans. Jesus Christ, smoking too much weed here. All right. No, fuck Keenum. We're going with Joe Flacco for safety. That's where we're at. Jesus. All right, here we go. Lucked out with my start, especially. Oh, wait, I'm done. Before I do this, let me just go double check there's no more comments. All right, yeah. We're good. Okay, lucked out with my start, especially Mixon. Still facing a very solid opponent. Anything you're changing in my lineup. So, and I think this is the guy who was saying like he's got Flacco in his lineup and he's trying to decide between like Flacco, DeVito, Zach Wilson, Desmond Ridder, Derek Carr, Case Keenum. So those are all like the options available to him. But he has already played Joe Mixon and Raiders defense. Okay, so he has 40 points already. So this is a situation where, yeah, okay, I'm going to go with Flacco. He is the safe floor play. I'm not trying to fuck it up and throw in a guy like Keenum or whatever just on a hope and a prayer. That's kind of where I'm at. Oh my God. Some of these, look, if you just post your team and what should I do differently, like to me, that's not a question. So let me prepare. Let me enlighten, because I'm not like I don't want to be like exclusive and be like, oh, fucking, you don't know how to ask. Look, if you're going to ask a question, like you're gonna post your whole lineup and be like, what do I do? At the very least, please give me league format. The size of your league, if it's PPR, like all of that kind of information would be very clutch to have in terms of making a decision. So we'll skip this question. Should I eat my peanut butter sandwich right now or add jelly to it? Ooh, okay, here we go. I'm going to freak you guys out. You should add maple syrup. Now, hear me out. This is like a Canadian thing. Peanut butter and maple syrup sandwiches are fucking delicious. Now, I think more traditionally, peanut butter and honey is like the thing that's known. But I'm telling you, as a Canadian, peanut butter and maple syrup, and especially if you can get, now, if you're going to do it with the bullshit that you get in America, I would say get Aunt Jemima, now known as fucking Old Pearl Milling Company or whatever the fuck they called it, because they couldn't call it Aunt Jemima anymore. The bottle that looks like Aunt Jemima, use that one. That's assuming that you don't have access to, again, if you live in Canada, you can either go to a Metro grocery store, which is a Quebec chain that's ultimately based out of Quebec, or if you live in Quebec, go to fucking any store and get the can of maple syrup. I'm telling you guys, this shit is liquid gold, to the point that, funny enough, the largest robbery in the history of Canada was for maple syrup. It is a literal thing. You guys can Google it. The maple syrup heist is the largest heist in Canadian history. They got like $20+ million worth of maple syrup. So I'm telling you, they take that shit serious here. And it was specifically, so Quebec maple syrup, like in the can, is like known. It's renowned across the country and, the world ultimately for people who know their maple syrup. So, yeah, getting long-winded with that answer. But yeah, what to add to your peanut butter sandwich besides jelly? Maple syrup. Shout out to SNA 123. Who should I start? Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa? That is a tough question. not the greatest matchups on either side. You're talking about the Jaguars are at home against the Ravens. Ravens, though, coming off a high-scoring game against the Rams. So maybe there is potential there. And then the Dolphins, you've got against the Jets. They're at home. Ooh, I think I would monitor Tyreek very closely is what I would do. If Tyreek plays, I think ultimately I'm going to roll with Tua. But if Tyreek does not play, or even honestly, if Tyreek is like a game time decision and, kind of fussing about whether or not he's going to play, I think that's where I would pivot to Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence could just as easily have a bad game. It feels like, though, the Jaguars need it more is the other thing. The Dolphins are 9-4, and the Jets are a lowly division rival. I think they could lean on the running game and defense and get through it. I don't see Zach Wilson really pressing Tua that much. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, again, for me, it really comes down to Tyreek and his availability. If Tyreek comes out and says, "Hey, I'm full go," like I have a real hard time benching Tua, knowing Tyreek could easily go for 150 and 2 against any defense, even the Jets. But I think for safety, ultimately, I probably am going to go with Trevor Lawrence. Again, it varies a little bit, but if I'm looking at my opponent and they already are tanking, like they've got some bad plays or I've got some good plays, or even if it's neutral right now, I think I would roll with, to me, what feels like a safer option today. Just because, again, with Tyreek banged up and being potentially a game time decision, if he's out, like fucking that would make it so easy for me to bench Tua today because it's such a bad matchup. But I think that if Tyreek's in, you kind of are your hands forced almost in a sense. But Trevor Lawrence is a decent pivot. Again, I think the floor for me is Lawrence, but I still see the upside with Tua, assuming Tyreek plays in full capacity. Again, if they're like game time decision, he barely squeaks in. That's kind of where my mind's at. Of what, I think I would just rather go with Trevor Lawrence because it's like even if Tyreek tries to make a go of it and ends up having to leave the game during the game, that's going to feel shitty. And then I don't see the upside for Tua to surpass what Lawrence could do in a potential shootout against the Ravens, both of whom are going to be, the Jaguars, if they fall, they're going to fall to 8-6, and they really open up the window for the Colts and the rest of that division to kind of catch up to them. So I think the Jaguars, again, need it more. And just, I think that the Ravens defense is a little bit on its heels the last couple of weeks. We saw it against the Rams. So I think that's kind of where I'm leaning. And then should I play Olave? If he's in, if he plays, you play him. Like, unless you have a really great pivot that you can go to, I would still play him. But I would also be going out and looking in your free agency and seeing if Rashid Shaheed is available. Because if Olave were to sit, I think you can put Rashid Shaheed in as a ceiling play and kind of hope for the best. Maybe it doesn't work out, but we've also seen him pop for 100 and a tutty a couple times. So I think that's a viable solution for if you're going to play Olave or not, is see if Rashid Shaheed is available as a direct pivot. And then kind of if Olave is active, I would play him above a lot of like floor level plays. So like if you were to ask me, Olave, if he plays, or Zay Jones, I would probably lean Olave. That kind of level of, even if you ask me Olave or Jalen Waddle, I think, again, if he plays and is active, I would probably go with Olave. The matchup is so much better. It would really have to be a as a superb, like if you had, you know, a Rashee Rice or a Tyler Lockett, even a Romeo Dobbs or a Jaden Reed in such a great matchup. Potentially, I could see myself pivoting there if Olave presents as a true game time decision, like Tyreek, like I was saying before, where if they're going to play, but they're going to play hurt and ultimately be hindered within the game and then have a higher risk of exiting the game in your fantasy playoffs, that's a fucking killer. And you just really have to try and mitigate those type of risks. Now, it's very possible he goes out and is just like, oh, yeah, fuck my bum ankle and goes for 100 and tutty. But you're playing odds at any given time. And I always say, like, look, I'm going to be wrong on 40% of what I say, fucking bare minimum. If you're hitting 60-40, honestly, in bets, like, you're good at what you do and you should, keep at it because it's going to hit more often than not. But it's luck based for a reason. Shit happens all the time. Fucking crazy things that we would never possibly expect happen all the time. I've been dealing with this a lot too in like hockey and basketball as of late, where it feels like it's not just football, it's all the sports this year are just off the fucking chain. Like, I don't know what's going on in any of them, to be honest. I have Leon Dre say, though, if you're not a hockey fan, this is like saying I have Tyreek Hill and he goosed last night. Like, what the fuck is going on? So it's like, it's every sport. I'm just I'm tearing my hair out. Part of it too is like, of course, like the first year I try to get into the content creation side. Every motherfucker's getting injured. We're having like the craziest, like luck-based shit happen this season. Like, some of the stuff that's happened this season are complete outliers that I have not seen in a decade plus of playing fantasy football. Even back in like week 8, I Googled when was the last time that so many players got injured in a season, and it was in 2020. It was the first COVID year. It was kind of unrelated. It wasn't because of COVID. There was a little bit of obviously people getting COVID and their availability being in question, but it was actually like a lot of major injuries that happened in 2020, like some ACLs and season enders and a lot of the same shit that we've seen this year. And so I don't know if it's maybe a huge argument for the artificial turf and you know, all of those arguments that they've made about how much more dangerous potentially it is for the players. Because if you look at, you're saying basically that even with the game being regimented and regulated rule-wise to make it the safest it's ever been, you've had the most injuries that you've ever had the last 3 years. And also, I think the other part of it, and it's being highlighted a lot this year, is the hip drop tackles. So when they took away the tackles with the head, leading with the head, and made it, they didn't just make it to the point of like you can't lead with your head. It's like if your fucking head touches the guy while you're trying to tackle him, you get a penalty. So it's like, of course, like the way that they regulated that and made it so intense, defenses had to adjust, and the way they've adjusted is they are grabbing around the waist and pulling guys down. That's the hip drop tackle that we've seen. And when you're doing that, two things are happening. One, because you're pulling down on the player as they are running, there's actually a higher potential of them slamming their head in the ground if they are not careful. So, you know, especially a guy who's full sprinting trying to get to the end zone, for example, protecting the ball, if you hip drop him and then he kind of fucking does one of these ricochets off the ground, and with the level of intensity we've seen from the concussion protocol now, it's like automatically you got to check that guy out. And sometimes he doesn't get to come back in the game because. And then the other problem is obviously with going low like that, a lot of times the defenders are rolling up on the ankles and legs of the offensive player. And that's why we've seen a lot of these ankle issues and calf issues and hamstring issues. A lot of these have been popping up because, again, the nature of getting hit that way, you know, when you are, and look, I played football in like a much more amateur base level, but even like I played enough to know that like the way that you get hit changes obviously where you get hurt. So if I was playing football and I would run into a dude smack face to face, like yeah, you know, I might feel it a little in the chest and shoulder area and shit, but like I'm otherwise good. But if someone went after, like when the dudes would go after my fucking knees and shit, like anytime dudes try to chop block me and hit the knee straight on, like that was easily the fucking worst. That was like you could literally almost risk my fucking like health and being in that game if you hit me the wrong way. And it's happened before where like I had to leave the game. Luckily, you know, I'm just like built tough weirdly, like high pain threshold, but like just the way my leg was like planted and the fucking dude chop blocked me, so he hit my knee and it went like back. So obviously it was like bent the wrong way and I had to go sit out fucking like almost a full quarter, like while they were figuring, just checking my knee and making sure like nothing was fucked up. I did get to go back to the game, but it's like imagine on the professional level. So it's like, again, if I'm running full speed at a guy and I fucking boom hit him, I might get some wear and tear kind of shit, you know, pain tolerance type of injuries, but it's not the same as a fucking dude going after my legs and like just straight like yanking me down. And if he's rolling up on my ankle and shit, like that's honestly the worst thing that ever happened in the scrums and piles is like when your fucking leg goes one way and you go the other, then it shouldn't. But ankles fucking suck in piles. Like, and again, I'm lucky that just my body's, I've just naturally always had a little more flexibility than most people. Like, I never had problems touching my toes and that kind of thing. Like, and then just a little bit of a higher pain threshold. Not saying that I'm like fucking the toughest person ever, but like, just generally speaking, like, yeah, when I get hit, like I feel like I can take damage more than most people, is what it is. Like it still hurts, but it's just like, I don't know, the adrenaline kicks in and just like I just have such a high threshold for the pain until obviously like days later, and then I feel it. But like in that moment, I don't feel the pain for the most part. It's just like the adrenaline so much that like it's like I'm so focused on what I'm doing that it's like everything else is kind of just blocked out. And a lot of NFL players are that way. So it's like, again, if you're getting hit, like you can take hits, but what you can't take is some 300-pound motherfucker grabbing you by the hip, pulling you down, and then landing on the back of your ankle. Like that's gonna it's gonna fuck you up every time, no matter how tough you are. So kind of got on a little bit of a rant there, but I know that already they're looking at potentially addressing the hip drop tackles and just tackles in general. And, you know, maybe it is having to go back to a little bit of an old school mentality of like, hey, like defenders need to be able to tackle these motherfuckers, but, you know, in a way where it's like, if you've designed the game where they can't hit in the tackle box, because again, this whole thing with leading with the head is bullshit. Okay, if you're leading with your head in the sense of your purpose, I think you can tell most of the time intent. Yes, they are bang bang plays, but you can tell intent most of the time of dudes aiming with their head and going straight up like helmet to helmet. That should still be a penalty, obviously. But this idea that like, oh, I fucking like when you tackle, literally, they fucking teach this to you. It's like day one, face mask between the numbers. You're not that you're driving your face into the guy's chest, but face mask between the numbers, and then you're going off one way or the other to get that good tackle form. So it's like if I'm doing that at full speed, and because other guy is like a running back and or a runner in that moment is lowering his head, it's like me doing a regular tackle and my helmet grazing his shouldn't be a fucking penalty. And they've made it that way. And it's like, that's why we've seen the advent and so many more of these hip drop tackles, especially this year. And it really has expounded and increased the level of injury that we've seen, that and the fields. I think you can combine different factors. And then maybe also just the fact that, these athletes are playing faster than they've ever played before. Anyways, very long rant there. We'll look for a couple questions and then we'll get the hell out of here. If you guys got any last questions, now is the time to drop them in the comments because I am going to go have breakfast soon. Tight end decision, Likely or Goddard? Goddard is so mid. I have to go with Isaiah Likely, though. You know what? Isaiah Likely has done this to us before where he's had a good game and then completely disappears on you. However, it is the tight end position. I'm looking for the most upside. I think I'm going to just roll with Isaiah Likely because, again, Goddard had like one really excellent game, and that was pretty much it feels like. I think he's kind of just mid, and Isaiah Likely presents the potential to have like an actual great game. Who do I flex? Kamara, Cup, or DK? I mean, you got to go with Alvin Kamara there. It's just the safest option. He's getting all of the work. Let's see here. Lineup advice: need 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, and a flex. So we have DK, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Devonta Smith, Derrick Henry. David Montgomery already played, and Breece Hall. So in this situation, I mean, I would have been wrong, but I would have probably gone with Derrick Henry and Montgomery. But I mean, obviously now, if you didn't play Montgomery, you went Derrick Henry and Hall. So we'll just pick those wide receivers for you: DK, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, or Devonta Smith. You know what? Against the Seahawks, I think I'm going to go with Devonta Smith. And then you got to go with DK Metcalf. DK, even though DK's bad games usually come when he gets ejected because he's acting like an asshole, but he has such monster ability, and he's been getting it done as of late. And the Eagles' secondary is terrible. So he should have a monster game as long as he can just keep his emotions in check and not get himself kicked out. All right. Well, that's it for me. Thank you so much for all you listeners out there. Shout out to the comments: Megan L. Hall, Raphael Quinton, Mike Virginia, Juan Pena Jr., and SNA 123. I appreciate all you guys dropping comments. Appreciate the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Obviously, you can go join the Messenger forum, but you can also join the actual site. They have all kinds of great stuff over there: trade calculators, league classifieds, But ultimately, the community that's building over there is excellent. There's a lot of really good fantasy analysts. There's some people that I play with personally in multiple leagues that I know are very astute fantasy players. But there's also like a lot of just general people in there. So it's a good mix. I would highly recommend checking out, again, fantasyfootballadvice.network. And for me, you will find me tomorrow, Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, reacting to all the bullshit from this week in our first week of fantasy playoffs. And then again on Wildcard Wednesdays, where I interview other content creators. I have an awesome one coming out this week. Hey, if you're here and watching this, you get a sneak preview. Joey Wright, very well known in the fantasy community, will be appearing on Wildcard Wednesday this week. And then on Thursday, we'll be prepping for week 2 of the fantasy playoffs, which will be week 16 NFL season. That is Thursday, also at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we'll be back, as always, Sundays, 8:30 next week. So once again, that is Monday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, live. Wildcard Wednesdays drop on Wednesdays, and we will be back next week with Sunday live stream, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And until then, I will catch you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes